Hey everyone, this is a quick video tutorial on how to do a question analysis on an assessment. Question analysis give us some really good insight into where we as educators need to go with remediation for our students. When we're looking at different questions and their answer choices, we can see, is it a concept issue to where students were struggling with a particular concept or skill, or was it a issue with the question? Maybe they didn't understand the vocabulary within the question, or when you sit down and look at some assessment questions, we can put a second or third eye on them, you see that question was worded a little awkwardly, and that's perhaps why students did poorly on it. Or even some of the vocabulary and the answer choices that students perhaps didn't understand can give you some insight into where you need to go with remediation for your students. So we're going to take a quick look at how to do that inside of the OLS. I want to thank Becca Fisher. Thank you so much for letting me use your class as an example. I really appreciate it. So you'll see here we're on our landing page for our classroom. The first thing that we're going to do is this quiz is located under Tools and Manage Quizzes. So I'm going to go ahead and jump over there. So Tools and Manage Quizzes. And then for the purpose of this demonstration, I'm actually going to select a quiz that has quite a few responses here. So I'm going to click on this 1.2 Explore IT quiz. I'm going to select the arrow to the right of the title, and I am looking for the word statistics. So I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to click on statistics. Under the statistics tab, there's quite a few things, information that we can gather from this. You'll notice that there are three tabs: user stats, question stats, and question details. On the user stats page, you're going to get an overall score for each of your students, as well as your overall class average, and where each student, or a percent of students that fell into certain grade bands. So as you scroll down the page, you can see the chart here in the middle. This will tell you the percent of users who have an overall quiz grade between such and such percent. So that's kind of good information too, because you can kind of pinpoint, the kids that are going to need some remediation here. You can keep scrolling down the page. You've got your class average here. This class average is calculated based on the way that you have your quiz set up. So if it's set up to calculate the highest attempt, and students have taken it a couple of times, that's what you're going to see here on this class average. On the next page for class average, it's just going to be based off of first attempts, which sometimes is a better gauge for us when we are thinking about where we really need to go with remediation, because here, when they've had a couple of attempts, that multiple exposure can play a part in knowing what exactly we need to remediate. So the next page is going to be on first attempt only. As we scroll down the page, you'll see on the left-hand side, you have student names, and on the right-hand side, you have their overall quiz grade on their current attempt. On the next tab, question stats, this is where we're going to spend a little bit of time, and then we'll probably spend the most time here in question details. So I'm going to click over to question stats. This is where you can see overall on each question how your student performed or students performed. If you scroll down the page, you'll see here again the average question grades for your students and your overall class average based on first attempt. So you see that number differs a little bit from the ones that we see on the overall user stats. As we keep scrolling down this page, you'll see each question on the left-hand side. And then in the middle here where it says average grade, you can see how your students performed on these questions as a whole. I don't really do too much with these three on the far right, so I'm not going to address those here. I'm going to really stick in this average grade section. So what I'm looking for is, for example, if you're crunching numbers for your interim and you want those top three questions, top three TEKS that your students did poorly on, I'm going to scroll through and look for those low numbers. So as I scroll through, I'm taking note here that question 5, they seem to struggle on. Question 7, they seem to struggle on. And question 8 was their lowest performing question. So those three questions, question 8, question 7, and question 5 are the ones I'm going to write down on a little sticky note so that when I click over to the next tab, I know exactly what questions I'm looking for analysis. The rest of these, my students seem to do pretty well on. If any of these were perhaps below 50%, I might want to take a look at those. But I have my three low ones, which definitely are below 50%. So we're going to take a look at those real quick. So I'm going to go up here to the question details tab. And the first question I'm going to look at is that really low question, number 8. And when I'm looking at questions, I'm looking at the question itself. I'm also looking at vocabulary, and I'm trying to think like a student whenever you're looking at these question analysis. So I'm going to look down at question 8. And the question reads, a career in information technology that involves using or managing computer systems is, and they had to select one of these 4 choices. You can see here a majority of the students, almost 50% of the students, selected network architect, which was not the correct answer. But then what's interesting is you have almost an equal split here between the other 3 options, which really tells you that kids have no idea here. They were very confused and all over the place with this question. And so when you think about remediation, some things to think about is perhaps going back and looking at this pathway again, because they don't have a clear grasp on which jobs fall into which categories or which jobs involve managing computer systems. And they may have used their background knowledge because they recognize this word network to be involved, with computer systems, for example. Whereas perhaps web designer and video game programmer are not so, overt for them. And then, of course, the medical record specialist was the correct answer. So there would need to be some remediation here and going back and looking at those pathways and jobs that use or manage computer systems. That question would be something you could pop into a warm up the next time that you see your students after you've looked at this data and just say, hey, we're going to go back and take a quick peek at this, quick review over, these particular jobs and what they entail. The next question that students seem to struggle on was question number 7. So when we look at question number 7, the correct answer, or the question says, one of the most notable impacts of IT on business is improved what? The correct answer here is efficiency. And you can see that they almost selected at the same rate efficiency and security. And so at this point, as a teacher, you're looking to say, okay, was this perhaps a vocabulary issue? Maybe they struggled with the word notable in this question, and just kind of trying to decide, where you would go with remediation. Do you feel like this was a vocab issue, or do you feel like it was something that you need to go back and really dig into the concept of it? Clearly, they were torn between these 2 options because it was almost you had 53 students and 52 students answer these 2 selections. So you would want to go back and take a look at question 7 with your kiddos. And then the other question was question number 5, which was a true false question. And again, the kids were almost exactly split on this question, which was a career in robotics is in the management information systems discipline, true or false. And so again, this is an area, it's almost similar to question 8, where it looks like we're looking into those pathways and determining which jobs do what functions. And so that may be an overall lesson, an overall remediation type lesson, because it seems like they're kind of struggling in that area. So digging into the questions can kind of also give you that picture, like, okay, they missed a lot of questions that were similar with this concept, so I really need to go back and do kind of a full remediation lesson on that. Whereas, for example, question 7 might have just been a vocabulary issue where you want to make sure that you're scaffolding and using the same vocabulary in class when you're talking about these things that they're going to see on the quiz or assessment itself. So, okay, that is pretty much the basics of doing a question analysis. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to your AP. Otherwise, have a blast analyzing.